Good afternoon, everybody. It is December 11th, 2024. I'm going to do journals today. Have to admit, I have a little bit of anxiety. I'm not really sure what's going on there. I think it's probably the new parts that haven't done this yet. So they will experience it. Sorry, just realized I got to change my lighting. Um, and see that it's okay and everything's fine. So let's just dive in. Okay, this journal entry is from, darn it, May 21st, 2024. So my session with Jon is over. I had lunch and did about an hour's worth of research on properties of royalty in Canada. There really is only one, Rideau Hall. There certainly are There are certainly plenty of oh, geez, sorry. Let's just leave it at. There certainly is plenty of land on there for a small plane to land on. After I ate, I found myself wanting a cigarette again. I kept asking Jonathan what's going on, and he said, I just want a cigarette. I just want a cigarette. So I thought, okay, go beat up on Ted. He said, take a cigarette with you. So I did. I beat up on Ted for about 5 minutes. Make this bigger. There we go. And I started having images of me having to decapitate an adult, the one and only adult that I had to do. I don't know who the man was, but he was a full-grown adult man. He must have been drugged because he just stood there. He was staring at the audience. You could hear a pin drop. I came out and I somehow was able to get high enough to reach his neck. I think I was on some sort of platform. I had a scythe in my hand. I remember I cut through his neck from the back, but it didn't go all the way through. It went through the bone, but left about an inch in front, in the front part of his neck uncut. The knife was so sharp and the blow so quick, he just stood there. I remember staring at it, thinking, I know I cut through him. I know I did. I could see the line. There was tiny little bits of blood along the cut. I walked around to look at the front of his neck and it was not cut, just up to under the ears. I thought I was going to get in trouble. You have to forgive me. I don't really look at these before I start. His eyes were still open and looking, first at me and then the audience. Then, after a minute or two of everyone being silent, including myself, and just staring at him, he said with the loudest voice, Are you not entertained? As soon as he said that, his head fell forward, the face hitting his chest, and then his body fell forward to the ground, blood spraying on the audience. The audience just erupted with applause and shouted. My handler came and whisked me off stage and gave me to my dad and told us to just stay put. I don't know what happened next, but shortly afterwards, we were ushered out of the building back to the plane and flown back to School Sisters of Notre Dame and then driven home. Forgive me, I'm not sure of something. So I'm going to stop share for a second. Pause this. Okay, I'm back. I one time I did a recording and the audio didn't work at all and I forgot to check it. I always check it first, but I forgot today, I think, because I got parts that are nervous, so that's what I did. Just check to make sure you can hear me. So we were flown back to School Sisters and driven home. I was really disturbed by the fact that someone could have their neck and spine cut and stand for a minute or two. It occurred to me while I was hitting on Ted, Jonathan was thinking that it must have been a demon that entered his body and did that for the audience. Right then, Jonathan pushed for a cigarette again. So I lit that cigarette and took about 5 hits and put it out. I sat there for a while, feeling my body start to shake. I believe Jon, my counselor, was right. I was given amphetamines in the cigarettes. Andy was activated too. Jonathan too. Now, Jonathan is a part that was trained to use scythes and to decapitate that. Entry I read to you probably weeks ago about, the bags on the tree. Cut the bag down, cut the bag off. That was that. I kept thinking about that, and then Jonathan told me to go in and get one of Chris's bayonets to use. It was dull and should be okay. I went in to find it. I couldn't see it, but Chris had a machete there with the sleeve on it. Jonathan said to grab that, so I did and went back out. Jonathan showed me how you would strike at the back of the neck with force required in order to cut through the spine. He showed me from the left side and the right side. All the while, I had that stimulant from the cigarette going through me, and I think the body memory as well from childhood. He showed me about 6 or 8 times how to do it. Then he said, imagine you using a side that's about 10 inches wide and 6 inches deep. And he said, that's how you do it. You're amped up with amphetamines. You have a razor sharp side that is designed to do just that, decapitate someone. It's all about the force, angle, and speed. He said because we were little, we couldn't go all the way through. He believes that it was a demon that entered our body to put on a show for that audience. No other explanation. And the line, are you not entertained? Was also used by Russell Crowe in the movie Gladiator. He had just slaughtered a bunch of people and turned to the audience and shouted at them, are you not entertained? He was the hero. Hollywood certainly knows about these things. Except this time it was shouted by the victim, whose head was basically chopped off, but still balancing on the body. And the demon was able to enter that body and shout to the audience. The demon became as the hero, and they loved it. They ate it up. They all stood up and applauded wildly. The people in the front row that got wet with the blood were thrilled and excited to lick it up. The handler told me that I was a hit. I didn't know what that meant, except that I must have done a good hit on him. Jonathan asked me to go out into the garage and finish that cigarette, so I did. As I was sitting there smoking it, he showed me more of that incident and the next incident. The people in the audience that got covered in blood were 4 people in the front row and 2 people in the second row. I remember hearing the handler talk about how they were upset that their clothes had got ruined. Not because they cared about the clothes, but they didn't have extra clothes with them to change into. They had to borrow clothing, and that was beneath them, and that they had to go home looking like that. But they were thrilled about the blood. My handler gave me another cigarette on the plane, and it made me very sleepy. Anne was activated. I feel very sleepy right now. The next time I was there, they had decided to set things up so that more people in the audience would get covered in blood. More people. Except this time it was not an adult, it was 6 children. They had children sitting on wooden chairs with their hands tied behind their backs into the chair. I forgot all about this. They were drugged and their eyes were glassy, looking around and at me. I looked away. In the garage, I was sitting in my chair smoking and leaned my head back like that. Then I remembered that's what they were doing, that their heads hung over the back of their chairs. Their necks were wide open for me. Then I was made to take the scythe and go one by one and slice each child's head off. As I did that, the blood squirted out onto the audience, and they were thrilled. Each chair was about 4 feet apart. So it caused the entire front row and a lot of the second row to get covered in blood. By this time, they were all prepared. They had extra clothing with them. Everybody was thrilled and excited. The heads just fell off the way it happens with the guillotine, and the blood squirted out all over the audience. They were thrilled. Everyone was applauding. The people that did not get blood on them went and touched and rubbed all over the people that did have blood on them. They were licking it and rubbing it all over each other. Everyone got bloody. Then they moved to the other room to have their orgy. My part right now is feeling embarrassed and ashamed. And I'm going to tell him that if you could choose to do that, to be there or not be there, what would you choose? He says to not be there. I said, so you were made to do those things. Yeah, he says. And drug. Yeah. So this responsibility is not on you, it's on those adults that made you do it. He says, I know, but it's still upsetting. I get that. So we'll continue on. Again, Dad and I were ushered out to the plane and back to Milwaukee and then ultimately home. I remember on the plane I was given a cigarette, except this one made me very sleepy. I slept through the plane ride. I woke up long enough to walk to the car and then slept in the car. Dad woke me up and he walked me into the house. I fell asleep in bed. I think the next day was Sunday. I believe Mom divorced Dad shortly after that because there are no more of those incidents. I find it funny that I got all of that training and Jonathan only performed those 2 times, but he's also relieved as well. After that, I came back in the house and I told Jonathan that from now on he had to show me any memory he wanted to, but it could not be because I smoked a cigarette. I appreciated the fact that he did show me those things, but from this point forward, no more cigarettes. He agreed reluctantly. Then I asked Jesus if he could bless me so that I would never smoke another cigarette again, ever. I'm sleepy now. I decided to take a nap, and as I lay there with my eyes closed, I also remembered that both of those incidents were Bible stories turned into plays, that what I was doing was part of the story. I was one of the actors. That's why they whisked us away so quickly, because we were peasants. We were not allowed to mingle with them at their orgy/party. Before we left, I heard someone talking about how they would have to take all of the jewels and dip them into boiling water to get the blood off, and that the clothing would be burned, sent to the incinerator. I napped for about 2 hours. When I woke up, I knew that Sailor was born when I was 4, not 7. So Sailor is a completely different part, but I think because I had released the rage and energy with Jonathan and his incidents, it released something for Sailor to say, look, you got the wrong age going on. So jotted that down and corrected that. I must say, I've been resistant to doing a journal entry for a couple of weeks now, but here we are doing it and we're fine. So 24 May 2024. Now, Joe is a childhood friend who at this time I did not recall that his father was one of my handlers. He was connected to the mob, and his father is named John, but his nickname, they were half Italian and half Native American Indian. But they swayed more toward the Italian side. And if you know anything about Chicago and Milwaukee, there's a heavy mob influence there. But his father, John, was called the Demon. That was his nickname. That's what he was called in daily life. The Demon. The Demon, they would say. So Joe is his son, and we grew up together. We were played in the neighborhood together and all that. So Joe just called me again today. We talked for another 45 minutes. He told me that he was thinking about what we were talking about yesterday. He told me that he remembered being in the basement with Angie, that's my older sister, and that he felt like she was grooming him, like she was coming on to him, and that he thought it was really strange. Then he also told me that he remembered that clownish face look that Angie would make and that he could totally see it right now in his mind's eye. And he said that she had that expression and when they were down in the basement and he feels like she was grooming him. Now that expression I talked about in previous entries where my sister Angie was made to be on a table with her ankles by her ears, obviously spread wide open, and men would come and rape her, and she had to pretend to be enjoying it and having fun, and she would just make this clownish face, and her eyes would get really big. And I was telling Joe about that memory, and just he's like, "Yeah, I could totally see it in his mind's eye." So that validated and confirmed for me that. Then he told me that he did remember that my dad would take us away on the weekends and leave mom home alone. That's just something that dad did. Oh my goodness, I didn't remember this at all either. Because I asked him weeks later about, no, I don't remember. Joe would come over to hang out with us and would get bummed out because we wouldn't be there. I asked him if mom would be there home alone, and he said yes, because my mom's house was the place that everyone hung out at. And so when we weren't there, he was really bummed out about it. He said he also recalled that everybody in the neighborhood would hang out at our house except when my dad was there. When dad was about to come home, everybody would scatter because nobody would want to be around when dad was there. Then he was telling me about how the upstairs renter that they had sexually abused Bob as a little boy. Now, this is in their house. They had their own house, and they were in construction and built this house themselves. And they made two apartments above their house, which was, I think, three bedrooms downstairs plus a big, massive basement. Anyway, then he also said he remembers talking, and Bob is his brother. Then he also said he remembers talking to his dad about it and that his dad had recorded Joe saying and played for Joe years later, but that he had seen Bob with another guy outside by the garage and that they were being, quote, piggish, which is what I think mobsters or Italian people call gay. And I said, "What do you mean doing something homosexual?" He said, "I don't know, but I just know it was called piggish." And that his grandma had talked to him about that and told him that sex was evil, and that she was the one that taught him about the word piggish. And then I told Joe about Bob and Marianne, our other neighbors, and how Bob was molesting Kevin, his son, but that Marianne never allowed Diana, her daughter, we had the same name, to be alone with Bob. And then Joe also remembered that Lorna Frank, another people in the neighborhood, Fran's oldest daughter, was once in our neighbor's house to the left of us, and she was being raped by that neighbor. That Fran was looking for Lorna and stomped into his house and found him screwing Lorna. So there's another pedophile like acts because Lorna was, I think, around 14. Then Joe remembered also that he believes he was molested by a girl who used to babysit for one of their upstairs renters and that he got jealous once because she left with another man. And Joe was probably only 10 years old. So on my block, here's me and my family having pedophilia going on. Across the street and down the block, Joe and his family, Joe and his brother are being raped. Down half a block from them is Marianne and Bob is raping his son. And next to us to the left, our other friend from a couple streets away, her daughter's being raped by the people next to us. So four homes on one block. I was gobsmacked when we talked about this. So I talked to him thinking, my God, our whole neighborhood was just swimming in pedophilia. Because you got my dad raping me and my two sisters, someone raping his brother Bob, another person raping him, Bob just down the street raping his son, Bob the father, and then our neighbor raping Lorna Frank. Then we talked about Satanism and all that Joe remembers different people talking about having orgies or going to orgies. And I know orgies are only ever really performed by Satanists. So you got pedophilia all over the place and Satanism and orgies. Then I remember the YouTube guy, Bill Schnoebelen, talking about there being Wiccan covens all over Milwaukee and how he used to write a check to the Church of Satan every month. So Milwaukee must be steeped in witchcraft covens and Satanism and pedophilia and twisted sexual practices. Hang on one second, my dog's kind of losing her mind. I don't know if my husband's about to come home, so let me pause. Okay, it's probably a cat outside or something. Um, so Milwaukee must be just steeped in witchcraft covens and Satanism and pedophilia and twisted sexual practice. So back to last night and this morning. As I was falling asleep last night, I remembered thinking it's odd that I haven't had any new memories, and I was wondering if something was wrong or if that perhaps my brain was just taking a break or a rest. Then, as I was laying there falling asleep, Wolf spoke up and said, "Well, I have something to show you." She showed me that she was taught to hunt and track children. The first time that she had to go out and do it was literally chasing on foot through a forest a little child that she wound up catching with a lasso, a rope around its neck. Once I did that exercise, it was over and I was congratulated and patted on the head. But then she showed me the ones after that where I didn't have to chase them anymore or use a rope, that my handler decided to use my psychic abilities in order to track people down. So they would pull out Claire, my other part, and put me in a forest, and Claire and Wolf would work together. Sorry, Claire would stand there and almost like Claire would stand there and almost like using internal psychic radar, be able to know which direction to walk, and then Wolf would walk to and find the child. The child would be in a small cage at the base of the tree on the opposite side of the direction I would be coming from. Once I found the child, then the handlers or the people in charge would come and congratulate me or whatever for finding the child. So I did that exercise several times. But I also remember as an adult being stuck in a very large crowd, a huge crowd. I think a few thousand people and not caring for being very deep in the middle of it. I told my friend that I was going to get out of there. Come on, let's get out of here. So because I'm 5'4", most of the people in the crowd are taller than me. I was able to weave myself in between and through so swiftly. I got to the outside edge of the crowd in under 1 minute. I looked back to find my friend and they weren't there. I had moved so quickly I lost them. Also, when I was talking to John today, I told him that Jonathan had only killed 7 people. The 7 people that I had recollected, and that I was also relieved that there wasn't more. I realized that no, that was Joker who had only 7 kills, that I had somehow mixed up Jonathan and Joker. I realized that when I was working on my map, that there was more kills that Jonathan had been made to do, that the first play with the one single adult was one. Then the next one with 6 children that would spray the audience was the second. Well, they liked that so much. We did it 3 more times. So I was wound up being made to kill 24 children and that one adult. It's okay, Jonathan. That's just me talking with my parts. So here's 24 me, the next second part. I was remembering what Joker told John today. On his first kill, it didn't go well. The man he was trying to strangle was fighting with his arms over his head. Joker had his feet on his shoulders and was pulling the scarf around his neck, but the man was fighting. It was not going well. As a matter of fact, the man was able to spin around and start choking me, Joker. I just remembered that right now. That's when my handler came into the room and cut the man's throat open. From that point forward, I was trained differently. to seduce the person to the point of being able to tie their hands up to something first. Then I was able to strangle them without them being able to get loose and hurt me. My handler was angry about the fact that this possibility wasn't considered during my training, especially considering I would be at a disadvantage being a 7-year-old girl killing 40 and 50-year-old men. He was mad at Dad, very stupid. I think it was at this point he stopped trusting Dad's training and he then handled me and Dad more from then on. I also realized today when I was working on my map that Frick and Frack didn't change their names. Frick and Frack split off into Finnegan and Jonathan. Frick and Frack are the two that had to learn how to kill while in training. Finnegan and Jonathan were the ones that had to learn to kill on stage. Plus, I have to admit I've been thinking about a cigarette for the past 2 hours pretty steadily. Jonathan does not like this agreement about him giving up information without getting something in return. I have not smoked a cigarette for 2 days. I have thought about it many times. I believe that was part of the deal that Jonathan had with the handler, and the other part called Moneymaker, that he would do what he needed to do in exchange for what he wanted. This evolved on the first trip to Canada. He was given cigarettes and then he wanted cigarettes. And it was the cigarette laced with the upper before the kill and a cigarette with a downer after the kill. This is how he could live with doing his job, particularly the one that knocked him out afterwards, because then I got woke up and not remember it. All was well. Plus, on top of wanting a cigarette and not having one, Jonathan did show me something else. He showed me that the next time we went to the Royal Place in Canada, that the chairs on stage were situated differently, that I was supposed to be able to stand between stand between two chairs with two different sides and at the same time slice two necks at once, and then move on to the next set of two and the next set of two. Each time I went there, I killed 6 children at a time. I did that 4 times. Total of 24 children. Plus that one adult man, 5 trips to Canada with the Royals. They loved it. I just got up. I went into the living room and got one of Chris's cigarettes and an ashtray. I lit it in the living room. He was in the bathroom. And then I thought about having to explain to him what I was doing, and I didn't feel like it. So he was still in the bathroom, and I came back into the bedroom. I came and sat on the toilet with the lights off and smoked half the cigarette. He has no idea. While I was smoking it, I remembered some details. I was in a dressing room, and that's when my handler gave me the cigarette. I was smoking it very quickly, and he said, "Hold on, take my time, let it work." I didn't know what that meant. I was being done up with makeup and a costume. I had a mustache placed on me and my hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail. I was made to look like a man. For some reason, I'm thinking I was made to look like a sailor, but it wasn't Sailor. It was Jonathan. Then once I was in costume and makeup, he did some exercises with me in the room. It was to get me fired up, to get my adrenaline pumping, what I would imagine that the military would do with soldiers just before a mission. He was having me take a lot of deep breaths and kind of grunt, not necessarily shout, but expel energy through my vocal cords. I did some physical exercises. I also did that exercise that you see some military people do, where they put their hands above their head and then they swoop them down to their sides, kind of like an ape, like this. I don't know what that's called. I saw Chris do it once when he was really angry. It shocked me because I literally saw the air move. So much energy was needed for on stage. He was also telling me to embrace Satan, to draw Lucifer down, and allow him and Satan to enter my body and work through me, to call on him to do my duty. Dad was also pumped up with my handler and with me to get the frenzy going. I looked like a little man all pumped up, my muscles flexed, my face a frenzy, and then I was sent on stage to perform when I was called. Right now, as I'm communicating this, I'm sitting on the toilet and having some mild diarrhea and cramps. I only smoked half of the cigarette. The other half is sitting there, and I want to finish smoking it. I don't want Chris to see me. I'm embarrassed. I've been so proud to have quit smoking for as long as I have. I don't want to have to explain to him what's going on. I don't think that he would receive it with compassion anyway, just perplexed. I have some moderate cramps going on right now. I know I should go out and beat up Ted, but it's 11 o'clock at night and I just don't have the inclination for it. Plus, I don't want to have to explain to Chris either. Plus, I only like to do it privately, and I'm finishing the cigarette right now on the toilet. Chris had been drinking all night and he's just fine right now. He's not being mean or anything. He's chatting with his boss through text. Stupid stuff. They're having a grand old time. I guess I just don't want to disturb his buzz. I have a lot of parts screaming at me right now that this cigarette is going down way too smoothly, and we are worried that this is going to lead to a pack a day. I sure hope that it doesn't. Well, people, it did. I'm at a pack a day. I need to make a point of being on TED a lot tomorrow. I am remembering that the day after a trip to Canada, I would have terrible cramps and diarrhea. Whatever drug was laced in that cigarette, my body did not like it at all. This reminds me of when I used to smoke pot when Joe was here. I used to come and sit in my bathroom on the toilet seat and get high in here so that he did not know it. I'm very ashamed of that. I would have the window open and a fan blowing out the window. This was my place to get high for a few years. Chris also came in here to get high as well. Our neighbors too, if the kids were around. I was high nearly all of the time that Joe was here. I knew that it was a very bad thing to do, but I did not want to stop. I have a part telling me that that was my way of punishing Chris through not being the best stepmother while Joe was here. Plus, his mom was a crackhead, so me being a pothead wasn't so bad. Crazy logic. Chris got to a certain point in his career, and he decided not to smoke pot anymore. Now, after all these years, his employer has finally given their employees permission to smoke pot. They are connected with the Department of Energy and they were never allowed to because it's a Schedule 1 drug, but now it's okay. When he told me that, I got nervous and I asked him if he was going to get high again. I asked him because I was worried that it would be within my reach and I would go for it again. He told me that no, he was not going to. But the way he was talking about it made me think that he wanted to. Plus, there was a small part of me that wanted him so that I could. I remember when I quit smoking cigarettes, I was a little bit mad at him that he still smoked in the house in front of me. He is a chain smoker. It pissed me off that he didn't give me the respect to go outside at least. He didn't even try or attempt anything at all. I had to quit smoking in a very challenging situation, but I did it. Now, this is my wife part talking up. And now here I am, just finished one whole cigarette. I'm sitting on the toilet and thinking about going to get another one. Pathetic. I got up to go out and get another cigarette, but instead I got tired, put the ashtray away, and came back in my room. Chris saw nothing. He even let Dixie in the room and didn't notice. Gotta love that beer. His awareness is shit. Now I'm sitting in bed writing this. The audience always erupted with applause once the children were killed and blood was spewed out all over on them. Then I walked off stage where Dad and my handler were backstage. In the dressing room, I was given a cigarette to calm me down and to be able to change my clothes and wash my face. Then we were taken to the plane where I was given another cigarette. That one had a stronger sedative, and then went to sleep. I was woken up when we arrived back in Milwaukee, and I walked to the car and slept again until I got home. I could walk into the house and go to bed and sleep again. They did this to me 5 times. Going to sleep now. So there's that. And my parts still have some sadness and shame associated with that. And that's okay. We'll work on their stuff. So I think I'm going to end off here so I can keep the sessions and the journals synced up. If they're not perfectly, forgive me. It's a little challenge. I haven't quite figured out how to do it yet. So I guess I should stop share and talk to y'all a little bit. But that's what happens when I'm interacting or remembering something is I'll stop and take a moment and let that part know that was not your fault. You did those things, yes. and it hurt your soul. I was just telling another part the other day, well, then if it hurts your heart, then that means you have a good heart. You don't have an evil heart. And the part was like, really? And I go, yeah. Because if you just didn't care at all, that would mean you'd have an evil heart because that's what those evil people do. But because it hurts you and you're embarrassed and you're ashamed and you're sad and you want to curl up into a ball and hide, you don't have to. It just means you have a good heart. And I would hug them and cuddle them and kiss them and tell them, thank you for what you did for me. Thank you for saving my life. Because if you had refused, if you had run away, if you had been pushed your rebellion to such an extreme, you would have been killed and I wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here. So thank you for what you did. I know that it was evil, but it's not because you were evil. It was because you were made to do evil. And that your heart is expressing itself as a good heart, a godly heart, a heart that is sad and ashamed and embarrassed and all that. But it's not you that should be ashamed. It's the perpetrators that made you do it, conditioned you to do it, suggested you to do it, drugged you into doing it, forced you. Because back to the original question, if you could have had a choice to do that or not do that, to be there or not be there, what would you have chosen? And they always say to not be there and not do that. So that means they have a good heart. And that makes them feel good right now, just listening to me talk about it to you guys, but I'm talking to them as well. So I love you, all my little babies inside, all my parts inside. You're some badasses, you're strong, you've got skills, and those skills will serve us now if we need to protect ourselves. So thank you for learning them. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. So, still have some sadness going on, so probably got to go whack on Ted. So, I will let you go for now. God love you. Bless you all. God surround you all with impenetrable shields with his holy angels standing guard. I ask Jesus for him to send to you his warrior angels in times of spiritual warfare. I bind all powers, principalities, spiritual wickedness in all places on all planes of existence. I bind them from you. I block all astral projection to you in Jesus' name. I ask God to watch over and protect you, to buffer your memories so that you're not traumatized again, but you're able to remember and record them and work them out. God give you strength, courage, wisdom, vitality, compassion, and his hugs and loves. In Jesus' name, thank you, Father. So, God bless you all. I hope your journey is moving along at the pace you needed to move. I ask God to send you to the right video or the right book or the right audio talk at the right time to help whatever part is emerging or parts that are in there that need help learn what they need to learn and forgive themselves. Not even forgive themselves, to just understand it wasn't them. They split in order to survive. They split, put in an impossible situation, performed what they had to perform, submerged, and switched out again. But that little part needs to know you love them. So tell them you love them. You love that they survived. Because without them, wouldn't be here today. So, all right, enough of that. You guys have a great day, great week, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Round and round, what color